Welcome, everybody, to Shmooze Radio. We come to you every single Tuesday right here on 1150 a.m. KKNW. I am your host, Rabbi Elazar Bogomilsky. I thought today would be interesting to give a little insight into this period of time that we presently find ourselves smack in the middle of the summer. See, what happens is, as the solar calendar is doing its job, the lunar calendar is doing its work as well. And it happens to be the Jewish calendar works on a solar lunar calendar. To confuse you a little bit, let me explain this idea and to unravel an interesting insight that many are not familiar with. There are those that strictly follow the solar calendar and Gregorian calendar, as it's related to in most individuals that relate to the typical calendar. The way we have it, January, February, March, and so on and so forth, the seasons that are divided to 4 seasons, and, of course, the lunar calendar, which is the calendar that works its way off the moon. So the solar Gregorian calendar works its way off the sun, sunrise, sunset, and, of course, the lunar calendar works its way off the way the moon operates in a period of 29, 30, and the way those days are divided. 29, 30 days, sometimes 28 as we call it, but basically the way we complete a full moon, the perception of how we see it, marks the first day, and as it keeps on revealing itself till it hits the mid-month, which is known as the 15th day of the month, the full moon, the expression is, and then it sort of weighs itself out. And this happens every single month. We watch the moon, and there's a calendar that's built around the lunar months, the lunar calendar. Now, what's interesting is there are different religions that follow either the solar system, solar calendar, or the lunar system, called the lunar calendar. For instance, take the holiday of Ramadan. You'll find that certain times it's at one period of time of the year, and certain years, 3, 4, or 5 years later, it's all of a sudden moved by a couple of months. And you wonder what happened, what changed. And the difference is that being that it strictly follows the lunar calendar, so as a lunar year has 355 days, and a solar calendar has 355 days, I believe, and a solar calendar has 365. So there's 354 actually and 365. There's 11-day gap basically between the lunar calendar and the solar calendar. 354 to 365. 11-day gap. So over a period of time, that 11 days begin to accumulate to the point that if it 1 year fell out mid-January, in a couple of years, it's going to be a month or 2 and so on, keep on moving along the system, because of that gap between the lunar calendar and the solar calendar. A Jewish calendar, known as the solar lunar calendar, is a combination of both. Hence, in a traditional Jewish calendar, you will find that every couple of years, there is 1 month, not 1 day, added as a leap year. It's not February 28th, so to speak, but it's an additional month. An additional month is usually right before the holiday of Passover, and the month is always called Adar. So there's an Adar 1 and Adar 2. Those are the names, the Hebrew names of those months. And that's what plays a role in making a typical year versus a leap year. So a leap year on a Jewish calendar, known as the solar lunar calendar, It's not one day, but it's an entire month. And the question is why? Why is there an additional 30 days that is added every couple of years to the calendar? And the answer is very simple. What happens is Jewish holidays, and particularly the holiday of Passover, has various different biblical names to celebrating this unique holiday. The holiday of Exodus, the holiday of Passover, holiday of freedom, the holiday of spring, as it's called, Chag HaAviv, the holiday of harvest, Chag HaKatzir. It's all there's many different names. Now, what happens is, being that it says one of the names is called Chag HaAviv, which means the time of spring, so it always has to fall out, this holiday, springtime. But what happens is, if you would strictly follow the lunar calendar, it would consistently change, being that there's a gap of 11 days between the lunar calendar and the solar calendar. So in order to make up the difference, every 3 years, we add an additional month, because the gap is 11 days. Obviously, a little less than 3 years would make up that difference between the 365 and the 354. Over a period of time, 3 years, that would be over 30 days. Hence, every about twice in 7 years, that's the best way of the calculation to work it out. It comes out there's a leap year. And the leap year adds an additional month. So, when it comes to the Hebrew month of Nisan, which we celebrate in the middle of that month, the 15th day of that month, we celebrate the holiday of Passover. It has to always fall out springtime. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but it gives you a little bit of an understanding to the uniqueness of the holidays and the uniqueness of the way the calendars operate. It's a very important point, because you'll find that no matter which year you look at, the holiday of Passover always falls out springtime. Now, sometimes spring could be up by a couple of weeks or down, but obviously it always falls out within that month period of when spring sort of kicks off. And that has to do with simply because one of the references, the biblical references, not rabbinic, not a group of rabbis that came along and said, we're going to give an additional name to this holiday, but biblically, there are numerous names, as I mentioned, the Chag HaMatzot, the holiday of Matzah, Chag HaAviv, the holiday of spring. We have, of course, Chag HaPesach, the holiday of Passover, and so on. These names give us a clear indication of what we have to do on those holidays and how we celebrate it, and when those holidays always have to fall out. So therefore, it always makes sense to understand that the Jewish calendar is not strictly the solar, and it's clearly not strictly the lunar. So it's a lunar solar calendar. How do we do that? Even though majority, it sort of follows more of the lunar component, but every couple of years, twice in 7 years, you'll see that readjustment, that we add an additional month, which makes up that gap. I'm telling you this because right now we're presently smack in the middle of a beautiful summer. And what's interesting is, on the Jewish calendar, this period of time that we just entered, starting this Saturday, but actually the fast began on Sunday, because on the day of Saturday, you're not allowed to make it a day of sadness, a day of mourning, a day of reflection of something negative, because Sabbath has in itself the spirit of joy, the spirit of healing, the spirit of celebration, and so on. But on the calendar, from the 17th day of the Hebrew month of Tammuz, following 3 weeks, which leads us to the 9th day of the following month in Hebrew called Av, the 9th of Av, teaches us and reflects on a period of time that's considered a time to be weary, a time to adjust, a time to reflect. Even though it's smack in the middle of the joy, many people are vacationing, yachts, traveling, surfing, you name it, having a great time, enjoying life at large. This period of time, known as the 3 weeks, commemorates the period of time going back when the walls of Jerusalem were breached, and eventually a couple of weeks later, 3 weeks later, exactly, marks the destruction of the temple. Ironically, it's not just the destruction of one temple, but the first temple and the second temple, both were destroyed, burnt down, on the 9th of Av. So this is actually a time that a person has to sort of do a little bit of internal self-searching, a little more righteous acts, a little more charity, a moment of reflection, of growth, of anticipation and understanding that when something, an era, a period of time, has negative occasions that befall on those days, it's not just a one-time event, but as the Talmud talks about this in great length, that unfortunately there were other tragedies. Moses descending the mountain and him breaking the 2 Luchot Tabrit, known as the 10 Commandments, the 2 tablets as we call them, and him watching the way the Jewish people were sinning at that moment obviously frustrated him, and he broke the tablets that he just received from God. Our commentators explain that this took place also on the 17th of Tammuz, which was this past Saturday to date. And, of course, there were other tragedies that took place on the same day. And the question, of course, is, when something tragic happens, a tragedy, a sad moment, is it simply out of chance that something happened? Or are there days on the calendar that a person should be weary and a person should think twice about doing something that might put them a little bit at risk, that could be dangerous, unhealthy, and so on those dates? They're called in Talmudic literature days Yom Peroniot, which means days of negative energy, negative encounters. Challenges have occurred on those days, and being that they're considered almost unlucky days, one should refrain from doing certain things. And especially because when we see that throughout history, that there wasn't just one thing that befell that day, but there was multiple challenges in different areas of Jewish history, of history at large, that befell on that date. Therefore, it's sort of, there must be something divinely, the energy of that day, of that 24-hour period, be wary, as they call it. Be careful. Now, this is not meant in any way to spook anyone or to say, gosh, look over your shoulder a whole day. But it means really, from the positive perspective, that there are things that we can do on this day that brings positive energy to that moment, to those times, to that 24-hour period. And this is something that is very important to understand during these 3 weeks at large. There are many, many customs in Judaism. You have, in traditional Judaism, people actually won't get married during this period of time, these 3 weeks. Even though it's beautiful outside, it's sunny, it's the ideal time. These 3 weeks, from the 17th of Tammuz through the 9th of Av, people restrain from getting married. You have some individuals, the last 9 days of this period, don't indulge in eating excessive fine wine or fine cuts of meat or things that bring an additional joy and pleasure. You have even those that take it to a step further. They won't listen to live music. And again, it's idea of putting ourselves in a certain moment, a reflection, that a person says to themselves, wait a second, I am trying to develop and find ways to connect during these 3 weeks on a much more spiritual realm, a much more godly and divine realm, and think about things that are not so mundane and caught up in the material world, because these 3 weeks allow the human being to transform what we want to use the term as perhaps not the most exciting and positive energy, but to infuse in it moments that hopefully these days will be transformed. But it's very, very interesting that throughout Jewish history, no matter which country, no matter which era, these 3 weeks are spoken about and written about, and there are many laws pertaining to how does one observe during the 3-week period, and within the 3-week period, the last 9 days, which are way more severe. You have some people that, in the times going back a couple of hundred years ago, when it was pretty common that people would take these long cruises, the way they would travel for months on the open waters, it was pretty common that people would be very careful not to begin their journey or hopefully plan around that they shouldn't be in the open sea. Until this very day, you have many individuals that if they don't have to fly, if it's not for something that's important, as a important business engagement or something else that needs to be taken care of, family or whatever it may be, family needs, it's just simply pleasure. Normally, one would not even travel till this very day during that 9-day period, which is again from the first day of the Hebrew month of Av through the 9th day of Av. Presently, we are just a couple of days into this 3-week period now. So the good news is that every single day, when one awakes, you don't get up and say, oh my gosh, it's the 3 weeks, I got to be careful. You're conscious of it, but I would like to take a much more positive perspective and a positive angle that individuals should awaken during this period of time and say, what am I going to do to think about something that has more meaning, something that's not about me, or something that's about me but about developing myself into a better human being. You see, what happens is, I speak about this all the time. Most individuals, not everyone, most individuals listening to this program now, and those that are not tuned in, I can guarantee you, most individuals spend very little time thinking about themselves in the sense of, where am I going with life? Am I proud with the way I'm developed as a human being? Am I happy with the characteristic traits that I possess? Am I engaged in a way of doing things that are helping others consistently? What's my check and balance, so to speak, of my self-identity? Who am I? Most individuals spend most of their time pursuing career? Am I achieving my goal of the things I want to become more successful? How are others perceiving me? Am I accepted amongst these groups? This little circle I'm not in yet. Why not? What's wrong with me? Which means that they're working and they're engaged and they're trying hard to become better. But for who? Is it a better human being, or is it simply a better, more successful machine? And I think what happens is, I call it life cycle events. Life cycle events is when a person usually pauses and begins to reflect and thinks a little bit deeper than the surface, a little bit beyond personal needs, personal desires. A birth of a child, you begin to realize it's not about you anymore. You've been blessed with this gift of life that you cherish, you cradle, you hug, and hopefully, most importantly, you guide this individual that he or she should be a real, independent, impactful member of society with all the fine characteristic traits, educated in a way that they can go ahead and pursue knowledge of others and give their knowledge as well and share, make this world a better place. I would imagine that's what every parent goes through on the first moment their child's born. Wow, what a blessing of life. I have now more purpose. I have now directed meaning of who I can guide and how I can guide them. I can do my role. I can be that role model, so to speak. And this is something that's very, very common when a child is born. Parents feel that rush of excitement, of pride, of wow, I'm there. God forbid the flip side of that is when a person passes. Many times the children, the loved ones begin to reflect and they begin to see things that are considered important in life and things that are less important. Things that will impact the world and things that don't make much of a dent in the sense of making a difference in this world. And many times I say this when I do many, unfortunately, funerals. And always as we're discussing and reflecting about the life of the individual that passed, I many times ask the family, so what do you say about this individual's character? What would you like people to know, their legacy and so on? And almost all the time, they really talk about their physical and mundane achievements. Doesn't matter if the person was a CEO of a company. Doesn't matter if a person was the greatest professor. It doesn't matter if a person was an amazing doctor, a great lawyer, a great developer, whatever it may be, an amazing programmer, brilliant, scientific, an engineer, a science master, par excellence. Rarely does that become the area that people highlight. They talk about it in a sense of pride. Yes, my mother, my father did this, so on and so forth. But really what they like to dwell upon are the characteristic traits. The different areas of life that this person paused from their busy life to give to someone else. The time they spent as a parent nurturing and guiding their children, their loved ones. Those are the words that echo. Those are the words that reflect. Those are the words that people pause and they say, wow, I want people to remember my mom or my dad for this type of life that they dedicated themselves to. Many times even a birthday is another life cycle event. A person begins to realize, wait a second, I was 20, now I'm 21. I was 50, now I'm 51. I was 70, and so on. Wow, this year, what am I going to do different? It's a time when you pause, you think, you inhale, and you say, wait a second, what am I going to do different to make this world not just the same year that I had before, but to make this year really, truly different? And it doesn't mean that it doesn't fade away. But on that day, or around that date, we find that many times people make resolutions. Right? We have different New Year's. Everybody's making great resolutions. I'm going to do this more. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to do more acts of goodness and kindness. Why? Take a regular Tuesday and do the same thing. Because there's something about certain moments on the calendar, certain life cycle events, certain moments that a person can reflect and say, okay, reboot. What can I do now to grow? Where am I heading? What am I going to do to make this world, my life, a more meaningful and impactful, not just on me, but about others? How am I going to become more nurturing? How will I be a better boss, a better parent, a better civilized human being that goes and cares about my neighbor, cares about my community, cares about my country, and so on? These are things that we begin to reflect the older you get, but it usually happens on certain dates of the year, when you pause and you go back. In Judaism, it works exactly the same way. From a spiritual perspective, if these 3 weeks that I'm discussing, from the 17th of the Hebrew month of Tammuz, which started this past Saturday, going 3 weeks to the moment of the 9th of Av, which again reflects the destruction of the first and second temple. Clearly, it's a time, it's a moment on the calendar that you should pause and do some personal engagement, reflection. Find ways that you can grow. Find ways that you can develop yourself. Find ways that we can find things out there in the world that are not being done yet, or to its perfection, or very little engaged, and pick up those areas. Do something that's outside your comfort zone. That's how you grow, and that's how you change negativity into positive. Because ultimately, all these days that today might seem like a negative moment, a moment that has maybe not the most positive energy, hence different calamities happened on these days. But overall, if you look at it, we can change that. We can transform days from sadness to days of joy, days of hardship to days of tremendous success. We can do it. And the way you do it is through acts of goodness and kindness. The way you do it is through the way you project from yourself. And others see that type of lifestyle and say, wow, that's the person I can be as well. And the more you inspire 1, 2, 1,000, and so on and so forth, before you know it, the world is rocking and rolling with positive actions. That's what we want. We want to stir up the world to be that positive and happy and beautiful, peaceful place to live in. And that's how we can do it. We're going to take a short break now. When we come back, I'm going to talk to you more about this interesting idea of what we learn from this moment known as the 3 weeks. Bein HaMetzarim is called in Hebrew, which basically means a moment that we just sort of have to make some internal and personal reflections And when we do this right, we will continue to develop, we continue to grow, and continue to impact. You're listening to Shmooze Radio with Rabbi Elazar Bogomilsky. We'll be back right after these messages.
ניסה ברוח הארבעים עם כל פעמונים ובתרדמת אילן ואבן שבויה בחלומה.
Join the Friendship Circle, a project of the High Center of Greater Seattle. That's a nonprofit organization. The Friendship Circle is made up of 5 parts: volunteers, children, parents, staff, and supporters. The true beauty of the circle is how we all link together to form a seamless circle of friendship. Through our Friends at Home program, we match teens with special needs children for the mutual benefit of both. The teens pay a weekly visit to the home of a special child where they offer friendship, recreational interaction, arts and crafts, homework support, life skill enhancement, and more. It bolsters brotherhood and promotes volunteerism by youth as well as adults. If you know a teen that would like to volunteer, please give us a call at 206-525-5011 or visit us on the web at friendshipcirclewa.com and learn more about how you can participate. The Friendship Circle and you. Together, we can perform miracles.
Welcome back to Shmooze Radio. Once again, I'm your host, Rabbi Elazar Bogomilsky. We're talking about an interesting moment on the calendar. Most people don't think about it, and most people don't know about it. And that's why I'm bringing it to your attention. It's known as the 3 weeks, again, on the Jewish calendar, which is a solar lunar calendar. It's the 3-week period between the 17th of the month of Tammuz, which this year on the solar calendar, Gregorian calendar, it was this past Saturday, and it goes for 3 weeks till the 9th of Av, exactly 3 weeks, which commemorates from the moment the walls of Jerusalem were breached until 3 weeks later, they were actually, the temple itself was destroyed. And being that the destruction of the temple plays such a critical role in understanding what it means to have the space in this physical world of spirituality, the house of God, as we call it, the holy temple, which many, many beautiful miracles occurred every single moment. Through the temple, many miracles occurred throughout the world during that era. And of course, even though many miracles continue till this very day, but the destruction of the temple creates a certain void, a certain space of spirituality that's been uprooted from the physical world. And every single day in our prayers, we always pray that God should show mercy and grant us again the beautiful blessing to rebuild the third temple. The first and second were both destroyed on this 9th of Av, which is again during the end of the 3-week period that we're discussing. And we ask that we should merit to have the rebuilding of the third temple. It's called the third temple, the temple that will be eternal. Migdash Hashlishi. The Bet in Hebrew, it's called Bet HaMikdash, the house of holiness, the holy temple. Now, what's interesting is, what we want the temple is not simply because, wow, it's a house that was destroyed. We want it to be rebuilt. We don't want ruins. We want the real, full thing. That's not what it's about, simply the physical structure. Because if it was the physical structure, we have the best architects today and the most remarkable developers that are dedicated, put it into a timesheet, and within a year or two, you can have the most fascinating, gorgeous, beautiful temple built. The third temple, the temple that we're talking about, is a temple that's being built presently, the way the great mystics describe this in detail. This temple is being built through our good deeds, through our actions. And every good deed that you do, another brick is laid. And when the time that this temple is complete through our actions, this temple will descend upon the world. That's what the great mystics describe. And being that this temple is built through our good deeds, this temple is a temple that won't be able to be destroyed. So one thing we see from this idea, it might sound godly, it might sound lofty and mystical, but one reality we have to walk away with. And that is, when you do something physical, when you're kind to another human being, when you show that gesture of love, you go out of your comfort zone and you extend of yourself. You see someone in need, you give them that helping hand. You see someone in need financially, you step up and you say, I have, you don't have, let me help you a little bit. You see someone going through a hard time with their day or their life or their month, you take them to the side and you said, what can I do? You look distressed. How can I help you as a human being? And the examples, you can keep on rolling and coming up with very, very mundane physical ways that you can impact another person's life. What happens is we really want to do it. But you know what we say to ourselves? I'm just so busy. If only I can have a free moment, I would love to dedicate my time to that type of work. And you know what happens with that attitude? Unfortunately, you never have free time because you're a busy person. And a busy person is always going to find something to make sure that they're busy with. Then the person that's not busy at all says, I can't spend time with that person because I need to find something that's going to help me with my life right now. So the message and the lesson is pause. Take these 3 weeks of reflection. Think back. Find ways in your day. It could be 10 minutes. It could be 5 minutes, or it could be an hour, that you can pause from self and become selfless. You can pause from me. What do I need from this world? And think of ways to become that bridge that takes from me and gives to you. Find ways in your life that you can say it's not about me. You know, it's an interesting thing. If you meet people that do give, and we all know those around us that really think about others. There's so many good people out there in this world that truly believe and think and are conscious constantly, tuned into the needs of another human being. If you were able to somehow take them to the side and ask them, how do you have the time to do this? Are you special? You must be a very holy soul. Hands down across the board, this will be the general theme that you hear. Me special? Are you kidding me? I wish I can do more. Or they would say, do you know what I give is way more than I get? And it's an interesting concept that when a person gives of themselves, they actually feel better, not worse. If you spent an hour making $15, $30, $500, $5,000, whatever your rate per hour is, and you took 10% of that and you gave it to a person in need, right then, You work a day's wages and you calculate what you've made for the day. You take 10% of that and you give it away. It's an amazing thing. When you do this act, you'll find that once you're able to separate the reality that it's not yours, that it's the gift that you have to help someone else as well, and therefore 10% of it, tithing, 10% of your wealth, of your income that you've slavered, and you have become that dedicated soldier. It was your creativity, it's your company, it's your position, it's your education. And you pause and you say, wait a second, 10% of this is not mine. I'm going to give it away. When you meet those people that do it so comfortable and smooth, without any effort, you'll find one consistent theme. They would all tell you, the act of giving feels great. The blessing to be able to give is such a tremendous and good feeling. The concept of taking of something that I have worked and now I can share it with someone else. It's such a powerful, simple act, but the world at large is challenged with carrying through this act. Because the truth is, the system was made up from above. As it's brought down in the Torah, the Bible discusses this clearly. Aser asrenu lach, tithing you should tithe. A consistent basic rule. If you make $1, 10 cents is not yours. 10 cents is to give to the one in need. What need? Whatever you think. Wherever you see, you're in control. You made the money. Yes, 10% is not yours, but you're in control who you want to give it to. That's the reward, so to speak, for working, that you can actually choose who you want to give it to. But the idea that you have to give is really not your choice. And you'll find when a person becomes that giver, when a person becomes that individual that's really engaged in making that world just a better place, you feel great about it. You feel wow. And you ask yourself, if only I could have more, to give more. And that's the drive that has to be. So the drive is not about self, not about importance, it's not about who am I? Am I developed? Am I going in the area that I wanted to when I started out at my first job? Am I climbing the ladder correctly? If it's all about am I going? Am I wishing? Am I hitting my wish list of all my needs that I set out for? Unfortunately, you might climb. You might even make it to number 1. But you'll never feel fulfilled. That's a guarantee. You will never feel fully fulfilled. The only time you feel fulfilled is when you pause from self and you give of self. The more you give of self, the more fulfilling you, the more ways you feel as a complete human being, as a fulfilled, productive citizen, as a happy human being, as a person that's impacting this world, because that's the way God made our DNA to work. Take is good, but very rarely there's a person that keeps on taking from society, taking from the right, taking from the left, even if you're working for it. The joy, the celebration, the concept of what it means to sever your gift from your hard labor and engage and deliver it to somebody in need is a tremendous warm feeling. take time from your day that normally you say, oh no, I got no time at all. You pause, step out of the box, and help that person in need. We're not only talking about financial help. We're talking about emotional support, joy, laughter. Be that citizen. Be that human being. Be that gesture of love, of excitement. Because that's contagious. And when people begin to feel the joy of giving, very rarely do they stop. Because there's something that you can't describe. The way the world was created, the way God created the human being, that when you do a favor for another person, it uplifts you as in the physical world. It makes you feel proud of who you are. And there is no greater feeling of self-engagement, of productivity, of individual and personal growth when you stop thinking of self and you think about another human being. And that's the message that I really hope today we can walk away with. It's 3 weeks. 3 weeks of reflection. 3 weeks of times that we look back and we say, how am I doing today? What am I doing with my daily chart? Am I becoming that human being that's changing the world around me? You don't got to change the whole world. Because if you change the world around you, which means one person, or two people, or three, and so on, then they will have that ripple effect and hopefully change the people that they encounter. We call it good karma, but it's not just good karma. It's called transformation. It's called making this world a haven for spiritual growth, making this world a place of joy, of celebration, making this place an area that we can say, wow, this is fit that the holy temple should be rebuilt. And all those beautiful things that occurred in that era should happen right now. 2019, going soon into 2020. We want it all right here. That's what we want. Going into 22, 23, 24, we want every single year an additional growth of that. That's the attitude we have to take. And I'm really hoping that we can take this message to heart. And if you think about it sincerely, and you look upon yourself, and you say, wait a second, it's smack in the middle of the summer. I'm out there having a great time. I'm finally waiting for my vacation. And now I have it. I'm going to live to its fullest. Do it. But also think a little bit about pausing from self and becoming selfless. The more you give, the better you feel. The better you feel, the world becomes a complete and peaceful haven. And hopefully we should all merit to only have joy, celebrations, and happiness in our life. You're listening to Shmooze Radio. We'll be back same time, same place next week.